So Office of the CEO, Jack Liang's going to talk about the Business Operations and Strategy Group, Digital Solution, Human Resources, and then Kathy's going to talk about the Finance and Accounting Group, and Caroline Lobdell is going to talk about Legal Services with Bob Baumgartner on our Regulatory Affairs, and Joe Gall will talk about our Regional Utility Services. So first I'm going to tee off is the Office of the CEO. So we have an administration group, and we have two programs, communications and community engagement, and government affairs. So when you look at the budget, we've downsized to 24 FTE. So it looks like the budget is really reduced. And what we did is when programs incubate within the Office of CEO, then they get moved into the programmatic space. So the administrative services has moved to Jack Liang's group, as has the culture, equity, and learning group. So that's why there's a reduction. But the programs that I am incubating is going to take 2 more FTE that's proposed in this budget. And it's our emergency management program at Clean Water Services and enhancing our ability to attract grants as part of the Chief of Staff's program. So we have a reduction in materials and services, but the 2 FTE is to be able to incubate those 2 programs. And then when I'm done incubating, it might shift into a programmatic operational group. So with that, I wanted you to see in administration, I have all of the executives within this group, and it's how we manage the different programmatic and department portfolios between all of us. So within the Chief of Staff, the government affairs, the emergency management, and the grants analyst. So we're incubating those programs. And then with the Chief Utility Relations Officer, which is Joe Gall, he's overseeing the communications and community engagement groups. So you can see how we're getting ready to spin those programs off. I'm now, we added the engineering and water technology group. They're not in the Office of the CEO, but Rick Shanley, I'm supervising that group and helping them incubate their programs. And then we also have the Ann Lee, who's my executive management analyst. So really our strategic focus,
And this book has a lot of pictures of Mark Joggers.
Oh, I know.
Have you ever replaced his position?
Yes, so our new Chief of Staff will start on May 20th of this month, and her name is Elizabeth Edwards. Yeah, so I don't want to call her the new Mark because she's sort of her own. But yeah. Okay. So the strategic focus for this group, so it's found on pages 139 to 153 in the budget book. So I talked about the program transfer to business operations and strategy for the admin services and the culture and equity and learning group. And that's a really nice 2 program changes that are really in its operational phase. And I talked about how we're adding the emergency manager and the grant analyst, and there was that one transfer of a natural systems and enhancement services staff to the community and communications and community engagement group that they talked about earlier. So for communications and community engagement, they're really focused on more deeply implementing our programs as it relates to community engagement, sort of our strategic partnerships as well for both business as well as internally. So you're going to see some roadmap development on that. It was really important to really mind map where all of our efforts are as it relates to our partnerships. And they're working with the Tualatin River Watershed Council, the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, and NSES to administer hopefully a $500,000 FEMA grant to really support our Tualatin River Watershed Navigator program to really help those streamside property owners understand their sense of place in the watershed and how they're impacted by the watershed itself. So we're hoping to get that going. And that's why the emergency management program is important, because in order to be able to receive grants like this from FEMA, we have to meet all of the all of the standards as it relates to emergency management. For government affairs, we're really looking to expand our legislator and agency outreach and our educational efforts about what it is that Clean Water Services does and how we advance and work on our legislative agenda and priorities. And we have a really nice working relationship with the GR team at Washington County. And we have our ongoing federal advocacy and engagement work with the Bureau of Reclamation as it relates to the Scoggins Dam, safety modifications, and this next year we'll be working with the partners on the local cost sharing for that program. So I think the estimate is a little over $900 million. So we expect that to probably go up over time as they reach into design and the final construction bids. It's quite a project here for the region. So that's the office of the CEO. Pretty simple. So the next group that's going to be talking is Kathy Leader on our Finance and Accounting Department.
Thank you, Diane. I don't want to go too far ahead. So finance and accounting, we have 17 FTE in our group. We do a broad spectrum of different services supporting our operating groups. We have accounting services and financial reporting. We do budget planning, development, and administration. We do utility billing and collections. We do the debt management and treasury for the groups. Here's our budget in numbers. The main increase in our budget, 12%, is our personal services, and that's really the add of 1 FTE. So I'll slide over because that's where we talk about that. So we have the people strategy going on in our group. We are adding 1 financial analyst in 25, and we did a mid-year reclass of a program support specialist to a financial analyst this past year, so it'll be a full year of that promotion. We're putting these financial analyst positions in place to support the operating units in developing and monitoring their budgets throughout the year. These individuals will also be assisting with updates to any of the financial plan documents, like the cost of service study or any of the indirect rate studies. So a key position for our group that's going to add value to the organization. We're also investing in technology in this next year. We purchased the Gravity software for development of our comprehensive annual financial report. So the annual report we do each year. Buying this software is really going to give us some efficiencies in development of the report itself and some levels of accuracy too, and checkpoints in the document itself. So we're really excited about implementing that piece. And I think the product you're going to see is going to look pleasantly, more in the visually very pleasant, similar to our budget document.
So Gravity software is the keep it grounded?
Yeah, that's it.
There you go.
And finally, one of the initiatives for our group is we have an intergovernmental agreement with Tualatin Valley Water District to do a joint billing. That actually expires at the end of fiscal year 25. So we are in the process of doing a cost of service study itself and cost analysis of services for billing that the water district does to help share in the cost of billing. So we'll be updating our IGA. This year, we didn't see a significant increase in our contract with them, just based on trending this year and increases. But next year, we might see a difference in what we pay for billing service.
Can I ask?
You sure can.
The question I'd ask is on that very topic, because I've heard the water district say before that they're not sure that they're capturing all their costs in terms of what they do for us. Is there ever any analysis to see whether we should just do our own billing?
Yeah, we definitely had looked at that in the past. One of the benefits that joint billing with the district does is, well, obviously there is some economy of scale of billing together, but also the ability to have the water shut-off feature for delinquent accounts it's a good thing. Yeah. So we will be contracting with a consultant to help go through a cost study and together work at an equitable share of the billing costs of service. Any other questions? Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Liang.
All right, good afternoon. I have the next 3 departments to present, and we are going to start with the Human Resources Department. So our Human Resources Department is currently a department of 10 FTEs that covers the full scope of human resource functions. And this is a key department that drives and facilitates our people strategy throughout clean water services. As you have heard, some of those initiatives that are in departments, that are in programs, in our operations, human resources is actually the support team that drives that and facilitates that behind the scenes. Our budget this year is relatively flat. We have a 4% increase on the personnel budget, which is pretty much our cost of living adjustment as well as performance increases. Excuse me. The materials and services budget is a 5% decrease. That's mostly contributing to some one-time projects coming offline, as well as some efficiency findings in our budget to be reduced. So HR is really a department that continues to innovate without a whole lot of financial investment. And we're going to go into a little more details on their innovative initiatives. So HR is a department that's responsible for our talent management within clean water services. And we look at our talent management through the experience journey of an employee from starting as a clean water services to the time when employee departs from clean water services. The first stage that we look at is the recruitment, pre-boarding, and onboarding experience. And we pay extra attention, try to proactively recruit for our talents, as well as we are revamping our onboarding program in partnership with Culture, Equity, and Learning to ensure that our experience for our employees to start goes beyond that first day orientation, but it's actually a more extended, a more immersive experience for the employee to get to know clean water services in their first 6 months. And then we move on to during the time when the employees are with us, we first look at the engagement and performance management. As Diane has mentioned, that we pay a lot of attention to our employee engagement. And we have incorporated the Gallup survey, but also at the same time, we are constantly working on clarifying our roles and responsibilities, clarifying the labor relations through the labor agreement, as well as working on our employee performance management to essentially modernizing what are the qualities and what are the skill sets that we're looking for. In the past, we have a heavy focus on technical skills, a little less focus on behavior skills, and we're notifying that we actually do need to look at behavior skills a little more than usual. And then we talk about learning and growth. You have heard a lot from other departments, our operation department, engineering department, about offering the opportunities to learn and grow within the organization. So we have partnered with all programs, with all departments, to ensure that we have career pathing within the department, within the programs, so our employees can actually build a long-term career with continued changes within clean water services. We are also looking at the leadership and supervisor training theory, as we believe that we are a department of 10 and we can only do so much directly, but we trust the power of our leaderships and supervisor team to actually be our advocate, be our satellite out there. And also we are looking at a lot of internal promotional opportunities. As Logan mentioned earlier, our best resource is our internal staff, and we're looking into how do we invest in our internal staff and continue to find opportunities to promote them from within. The last part of the employee experience journey is related with departure, whether if it's related with retirement or whether if it's related with a departure for other opportunities. So we pay attention to celebrate all of the employees that retire with us, and we really think that's a great journey that leads to retirement. And also, no matter if it's a retirement or departure, we encourage exit interviews with the employees. Those are usually the areas where we can learn things on how we can actually become a better employer, continue to improve that. There is an industrial term that's getting a little more popularity about boomerang employees. What that speaks to is an employee that has departed an organization for a long or short period of time, and they return to the organization as the next part of their journey. And usually that speaks volume to the employee left on good terms, still consider the employer as a great employer to work for, and then keep that option open to come back. And at Clean Water Services, we're starting to see some of those boomerang employees actually returning to Clean Water Services with more skills and experiences.
Does that definition include retirement and work back?
That is a part of that.
Okay.
That is part of that, but more so is, it feels like that our retirement and work back it almost feels like the employee never left, right? So when we say, yeah, it does qualify for that, but when we see boomerang employees, it's more focused on the employee who left for a period of time and then decide voluntarily wanting to return to clean water services. All right, and in addition to the employee experience journey, we also pay a lot of attention to our workforce well-being. And we look at that through our benefit program, through our wellness program, as well as our employee recognition and appreciations. On the benefit program, Diane mentioned a little bit earlier, we are constantly looking at better plan choices. We're constantly looking for better benefits that we can offer to our employees. And this year, we are working on a project to switch our benefit plan into a more robust plan. On the wellness program, we actually took a pause during COVID just because we were shorthanded at that time. We are in the process of reevaluating our wellness program to offer new wellness benefits, wellness initiatives to today's workforce. As Diane mentioned, that 50% of our workforce were with us 5 years or less. So, and they have a lot of new needs, a lot of new preferences on the wellness program that our HR is assessing and trying to meet those needs. Last but not least, we all know that recognition and appreciation is actually a big deal within an employee's journey, as well as it's a big deal to an employee's well-being. So we pay particular attention to that, not only that we do recognition and appreciation, we try to encourage meaningful and individualized recognition and appreciation. So that's the wonderful work. That's honestly only scratching the surface of the wonderful work of HR department. And I am ready for any questions that you might have.
Hi, Jack. Thank you. One of the things I'm curious about is I'm looking at the roadmaps and looking on page 74, at least beginning, and this is a couple years ago, you had under talent management implementing the apprenticeship programs. I'm encouraged and really interested in the development of like life cycle programs where a person could have a complete professional life cycle within clean water services. Remind me if this is still primarily limited to operations. Will there also be opportunities like with the wet people and the natural systems and business and other places to try to bring in programs like that and recruit, hopefully, from communities that are really underrepresented?
Thank you. That is a great question. And our goal is definitely to have those opportunities throughout the entire district. Our operations folks, particularly in the water resource recovery areas, as well as the field operation areas, are those, I guess you can call it early pilot areas, just so we can kind of stand up a small program, see some success, learn some lessons, and then before we roll out to other programs. We do always, we have an ongoing program to bring in internships into our engineering and research and innovation groups. So we actually, rather than calling it an apprenticeship program, we actually do have a little bit of an internship program that is in our engineering group already.
Yeah.
Are they paid internships?
It's paid. It's an organized program with the universities. So they call it MECOP and CCOP. So they do it during their junior and senior years. And then, as the team talked about, postgraduate and doctorate folks to work with us. Yeah, so that one's different because it's actually an organized group that already exists.
Awesome. And then I just want to point out on page 75, the service level and performance measures, the 24-25 targets are missing.
See, 25.
Then if you will, bear with me. I'm not done. Alex, don't cut me off. Okay, thinking about the culture, equity, and learning group, looking around pages 30 through 33, and I realize these are not budget questions, but they're roadmap, but I think they're still relevant today. thinking about, I'd love to know a bit more about what Equity Lab is. And then also, I think that on the center of page 33, where it talks about co-creating and reporting on equity metrics that align with those 4 desired focus areas, I just want to endorse and thank you for recognizing those 4 areas. I think they're really important.
Thank you.
And just in case you haven't already, I hope Clean Water is considering some organizations like Center for Diversity and the Environment for trainings. They have entire cohorts of people that they can take through that really help make people who may not necessarily have a lot of exposure to other cultures and biases and things, really help build knowledge, sensitivity, and just kind of really get people ramped up to help implement more equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Just a quick comment about that is we are actually reporting on our equity metrics at our July board learning. So we would like to invite you to kind of comment and observe that portion of our board learning session. Yeah, thank you. All right, any other questions on human resources? Okay, no more questions. We'll move on to Digital Solutions Department. And Digital Solutions Department is a 22 FTE department that has 2 programs under the department. And this is our naming convention for essentially our information technology group. So on the 2 programs that you see on the slide, we can oversimplify the left side as the software side, which is the IT business applications. And the right-hand side is more of our hardware infrastructure side, which is the infrastructure and digital security. And their service provisions are listed under each one of those programs. So digital solutions budget, unlike our human resources, technology is actually an area that costs some money to innovate and costs some money to modernize. So we actually do have a 16% increase in our personnel services budget, as well as a 27% increases in material and services. And the majority of that increase on the material and services side is the increased need for software applications, as well as increased licensing need, as Kathy had mentioned some of those before. With the 16% personnel increases, we actually, not all that 16% is increase of the total budget. There were actually some transfer-ins from other departments. That's part of that. We did have 1 vacant business system analyst position that was transferred in from regulatory affairs, 1 vacant data analyst position that was transferred in from research and innovations, and 1 redesignation of a cybersecurity manager position to catch up to the market level of the roles and responsibilities, and 1 redesignation for senior IT technician to create career paths. So all 4 of those did not actually create a new FTEs within the big picture. There were just some transfers that made it look like an increase in our digital solutions. There was 124 media ad of a network administration position. That was actually an additional FTE in FY24. So we will, as I mentioned, that our material and services is actually the big increase in digital solutions, and we're going to go into a little more details in the next slides. Digital solutions, as many department has mentioned, that we really do have a focus on our continued improvements. And when we see continued improvements in digital solutions, we look at 2 aspects. 1 aspect is the system aspect, is what is our hardware, what is our data center doing, what are the software that we're doing, are they providing us enough protections, are they providing us the ability to carry on business. The other areas is the process improvement side, which is how are we doing our work, and how is that dictating how we provide IT services. On the infrastructure side, we did a lot of migration of our new data center. We're actually working on a co-location that is a third-party hosted location for our data center, and that is much more resilient from a disaster recovery perspective. We are redesigning our network and server architectures to provide more security and a better performance within Clean Water Services work. We upgraded our VPN and as well as we implemented E911, which stands for Enhanced 911 Services this last year. In the process improvement area, we are strengthening our project management and communications with departments, as well as we are in the process of standing up a technology steering committee that actually helps digital solutions to prioritize on the new technologies to deploy. And in addition to that, we have cybersecurity awareness that is a strategic focus area for digital solutions. And we'll talk more about cybersecurity on the next slide. So cybersecurity is not exactly a new term anymore, right? But it's a term that never gets old. It doesn't age. It's like, what's its secret, right? So it's every year there's new challenges. There's new technologies. The bad actors out there are looking out some new ways to penetrate our systems to really take advantage of businesses. And we hear horror stories about certain organizations getting penetrated and then are actually in a very bad place. So this is one area Clean Water Services doesn't take lightly and spend a lot of investment and attention in these areas. On the capability side, we increased our intrusion detection and response software. We did vulnerability management, endpoint scanning, email detection, firewall improvements. I have to say, with all those improvements for the last 2 years, we're in a much safer position with cybersecurity compared to even 2 years ago at Clean Water Services. And then in addition to that, we did a lot of testing and training. We do have an annual training for all employees that is mandatory to raise cybersecurity awareness. And we did a tabletop exercise in emergency kind of situation, and then kind of iron out our protocols in a data breach or a cybersecurity kind of incidents. And then we did an external penetration test and had a lot of great improvement areas identified for Clean Water Services to improve in the next year.
Question, given that CWS relies, contracts with TVWD for customer billing for the UUA and local contract service areas, have you worked with TVWD so that you're assured of their level of cybersecurity implementation?
Yes, as a water utility, they take cybersecurity really at the forefront of their concern, and they have a really great group over there that's managing their system. But absolutely, because we have to protect that data.
Yep.
But what I wanted to share is this intrusion is very real. We've had intrusions at Clean Water Services. There was a case where they loved to impersonate me, and some of it's coming from Uzbekistan. I mean, that's how crazy this is. And we have they know where these intrusion things are coming from, to the point where they ask they think it's me asking Kathy to do certain things, but the team is very good. But we've had a circumstance of fraud where people impersonate a vendor and they're trying to change banking. So those are very real things that are occurring at Clean Water Services. And the team at Digital Solutions, they do it with a very efficient way. But I am concerned. There's a lot of traffic from EPA and from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency that there's specific intrusion and concerns related to our what we call our SCADA systems, so our supervisory control and data acquisition systems. And they use it to take control of treatment facilities, as an example. So this is an area that we're going to continue to have to invest in and to protect our systems, and the threats are very real.
Yeah, absolutely. Just piggyback on the SCADA system, that is one of our most critical infrastructure software that we use. And what we did is actually put it on a separate network, so it doesn't have an easy cross traffic between our normal internet traffic with our critical systems. We're not taking it lightly. Thank you. So investment. This is where we talk a little bit about investment. Digital Solutions being an internal service department, none of the investment is actually for ourselves. It's always for the other operating departments. It's for the operation of Clean Water Services. So there are 3 general categories in summary. The first category is the high-cost core services, which are the fiber and the network upgrade. The Open, which is the utility billing software that we jointly implemented with TVWD. And then we are also migrating from VMware to Hyper-V. That is a pretty significant network software switch that we're doing. And in the next category, the value-added software for employees. So these are employees' software that's deployed to each employee's devices, including Asana, which is a project management software. Miro, which is an online collaboration software, as well as Copilot, which is the newest Microsoft's version of AI software that can help. We're doing beta testing, so there's not a wide rollout for that. There's a number of other things within that category, which adds up to about $300,000 additional investment in that. And those are all due to increasing need of our employees that made us having to purchase more licenses and increase our footprint in those existing softwares. Last but not least is increasing our capabilities of $127,000 roughly investment, and that's mostly in two areas. One is the cloud infrastructure, where we're actually migrating from on-prem management of our data into the cloud management of data, and the other area is cybersecurity that we are taking it very seriously. Did we mention about cybersecurity yet? That is our number one priority.
How do you spell cybersecurity?
And that concludes digital solutions. Is there any questions for this department? Right. So we'll move on to the next department. The next department is the Business Operations and Strategy Department, and it starts on page 155 of the budget book. So this department has 5 programs. As Diane has mentioned, 2 of the programs were new this year, which is administrative services that provides our centralized business admin support within Clean Water Services, as well as provides the board and CWAC coordination. And many of you have worked with some staff in those capacities. And then our Culture, Equity, and Learning is also a new program that we're transferred into Clean Water, that's transferred into Business Operations and Strategy. And that is the group that focuses on our culture, equity, and learning. And they are actually our central driver and facilitator of our equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies, our employee engagement strategies, as well as employee learning and leadership development within Clean Water Services. The other 3 programs that are existing in business operations, starting off with business opportunities and operations. That is the program that actually look at our internal opportunities to improve business processes. Essentially, it's a process improvement function. And then also the external opportunities where we are seeking business interest for Clean Water Services. You have heard the renewable natural gas as a project that Logan mentioned. We actually have a strategist from this group that partners with our operations, partner with our engineers, as well as our CEO to explore external opportunities just like that. And then our procurement group currently is sitting within this program as well. And then we'll move on to risk and insurance management. That is a very, very standard and excellent risk and insurance management program that actually manages our insurance portfolio, manages any liability claims, any workers' comp claims. Everywhere that we feel that we need to insure our risk, this program actually takes care of that. Last but not least, we have our strategy development and enterprise performance program. That is the program that's facilitating our strategic planning across the district, our performance excellence, our financial strategies, partnering with finance, integrated planning, as well as strategy delivery and project management. So if you look at the budget changes in this department, you're going to see a whopping 128% increase in our personnel services. And that is primarily due to the transfer of those 2 programs into this program. For your convenience, we actually did a base comparison, which actually brings those 5 programs apple to apple across the years to see where we changed. Actually, we're seeing a 6.1% personnel change, which primarily is COLA plus performance increases. And then material services stays flat at about 1.2% change. So we're not making any much additional investment into this department. So within departments' focuses and strategies, let me start on the internal first. So within the department, as it is still relatively a newer department, a younger department, so we're doing a lot of department building and team building within the department. As you heard, that we have 2 programs moved into the department from Office of the CEO. And then we also focused on recruitment and filling multiple vacant positions within this department so we can carry out the mission of the department, including a learning coordinator in our Culture, Equity, and Learning program, which is actually going to change our game at Clean Water Services on our support for employee learning. And then department culture, we actually are focusing on better employee engagement through the Gallup action plans, as well as focusing on cross-functional integrations. Your first impression, just hearing about what this department does, you probably hear like there's a very diverse skill set, very diverse capacities. And how do we actually mix those programs so everybody work together in a package of the services? That is kind of the department strategy. And in doing that, we can actually offer better services to other departments within clean water services. So outside of the department, this department's mission is really supporting CWS for success. And starting from the performance excellence, which is worth mentioning, as Diane mentioned, that we completed our very first performance excellence light application this year, received a lot of great feedback on where we can improve as an organization in terms of performance excellence. Also, at the same time, I think it's worth mentioning that we also received a lot of kudos on the areas that we did right, and those are the areas that we actually have a good idea to say, let's not change that. Let's keep doing what we're doing right. And then we have continued development and updating the roadmap. So the roadmap book that you see in front of you is facilitated by this department and the strategy program. And optimizing business processes and develop business opportunities. And then in the area of the engage and learning organization, we facilitate a Gallup survey and action plan. This is still early information. I want to say that we're in our year 3 of our Gallup survey. I haven't seen the end result yet, but what I'm hearing is our participation rate increased even more. What that means is that from a participation perspective, our employees are generally getting more interested and more engaged with the Gallup survey. And then we're revamping our employee onboarding program in partnership with HR, and we had 2 sessions so far. So what we did is we built a 6-month immersive program for our new employees to get to know clean water services. And we speak from our mission, vision, value, to our history of clean water service, how we were formed originally, what kind of organization we are, as well as to the more practical about what's our operations and what kind of regulatory compliance limitations that we're challenged with. So we're really trying to basically set the tone right in the first 6 months of any employees joining clean water services, so they actually get the full picture. So far, the feedback has been very positive, and we actually quoting directly from some employees that said, I have never experienced an onboarding program like this, and we really appreciate the investment in our well-being here. And then we launched the first CWS-wide leadership learning program, which also a very, very successful learning experience. We had about 15 participants in the program, and that ranges from our early managers or even folks that are about ready to become managers within the organization. And then through that program, I feel that not only that they learned essential skills to be successful in their next role, but also they build a great connection within the organization that they can actually bounce ideas back and forth with. So it's a great program. And then we are in the process of developing a curriculum-based supervisor training program to provide essential skills to all of our supervisors. So next page, supporting CWS for success. Now you have heard equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts in almost all departments that was presenting today. And I want to say that this group actually helps facilitates and supports all of those efforts within the department. And our belief in equity, diversity, and inclusion is being pragmatic and practical. And also we focus on infusing EDI efforts in department operations, which is why you're hearing a lot of those department operations actually has the EDI footprint in there. In the CEL group, the Culture, Equity, and Learning, we are partnering specifically with human resources and other departments to diversify our workforce. And then we're partnering specifically with our procurement on diversifying our suppliers. So those are the 2 very focused areas that we do. And in addition, we stood up 2 ERG groups, which are the employee resource groups. One is the Multicultural Committee, the other one is the Gender Equity Network this last year, and the employee feedback on that has been very positive. There are many other projects, went too fast. There are many other projects within this department that is worth mentioning, which is listed on the slide. I'm not going to go into details in each one of them. And again, we're only having enough time to scratch the surface with all the wonderful things that happen in this department, but it truly is a department that's supporting CWS for success. With that, I will finish my presentation and open it up for questions. All right. Without any other questions, we will move on to Regional Utility Services Department.
Good afternoon again. I'm here briefly, Joe Gall, the Chief Utility Relations Officer, and talking about my favorite department, the Regional Utility Services Department, or RUSD is the term that we use. So RUSD, I like to tell my team, we're very externally focused. We primarily work with, obviously, our 12 partner cities in the county. We work very closely with the development community and a lot of businesses and industries that are looking to expand or to build in our service area. We have two main programs, development services, which is the bulk of our staff. I like to look at that. This is the old planner in me. It's like current planning in a lot of municipalities. Those are folks that are dealing with applications that are going through the pipeline, basically, and then also projects under construction. So our erosion and sedimentation control inspectors are out on those sites making sure standards are being met. So it's very much like a current planning type function in cities and at the county. Systems planning, I look at as more long-range planning. Again, we're working with those partners. We're looking more long-range in terms of planning for the future and how we can meet the demands of our various city partners in terms of their expansion plans. Our budget, as you can see, is relatively flat in terms of the FTE count. The bump up to 35 is a backfill that the board just approved because we lost Andy Braun, who you heard from earlier. Andy's now working over in the enterprise and our engineering and water technology department. So he's gone, and then we will backfill that position or fill that position. So we really are staying flat in terms of FTE. I did want to touch just briefly on the materials and services. We have an increase of $65,000 for contracted services to continue with some specialized help from a business systems administrator with specific knowledge of our customized permitting system, which we call Amanda. So over the next year, we'll launch the applicant portal, which integrates with Amanda, as well as add the iPad interface and other modules to Amanda to support our construction inspection team. So that's the reason for the slight increase in that budget line item. So as I said, we work primarily with many external partners, supporting industrial readiness and housing production. We've spent a ton of time this past year and will continue in these two primary areas. Rick talked earlier about semiconductor opportunities. We have been working very, very closely with North Plains and Hillsborough specifically because of Senate Bill 4 and the potential for expansion in the semiconductor industry to make sure we're ready if something big happens in either of those communities. So we meet almost weekly with them just to stay in touch and stay on top of things. I wanted to touch about expedited infrastructure improvements. An example, Sherwood is looking at Sherwood West. This is a large expansion that is on the horizon potentially if Metro approves the UGB expansion. We had a project that was scheduled to be built in 2026 right along Roy Rogers Road. So if you've been driving along Roy Rogers or Tualatin Sherwood Road in the last 2.5 years, it's been under construction because of county road improvements and the Willamette Water Supply Project. So our team said, wow, that project's going to be all buttoned up by 2025, and then we're going to reopen the road again and put a pipe in the ground in 2026. The community's going to love that because they love when people coordinate and different agencies coordinate. So we actually worked with the county and said, hey, could we put that force main pipe in early as part of your project while the road is still under construction, which the county agreed to and the contractor agreed to. So that pipe's going in the ground now. It didn't delay the project, and we're saving almost $1 million in terms of doing it in 2026 because the contractor is ready. the staging's there, everything's ready to go. It's very simple for them to kind of add that to the project. So that's an example where by being closely in touch with our city partners and looking out over the horizon, doing things differently, and maybe expediting some things that normally in the past we might not have done. Housing production is another area that we work very, very closely with our county and city partners. Obviously, that was a very big priority in the short session with the governor's emphasis. That was her #1 priority. A lot of legislation was being proposed, so we worked very closely on my team, the planners on my team, worked very closely with Tracy Rainey, who understands how to work down in Salem and who to talk to in the legislative body. And we were very much engaged this session and will be in 2025 because we have a role to play in that. We can actually help housing production if we're involved and at the table in many ways in terms of legislation and the work that's going on in Salem. We're also on the same kind of level more with our city and county partners talking about middle housing implementation. How can we help increase more middle housing in the county to again address the housing production issues? And then planning for expansion, we're very, very busy because our cities are very, very busy. Either planning for expansion areas like Sherwood and Sherwood West, or actually seeing projects actually come out of the ground. So Beaverton with South Cooper Mountain, Tigard with River Terrace, King City's right on the horizon in terms of dirt being moved in their expansion area, and then talking with cities like North Plains, Sherwood, and Hillsborough in terms of future expansion areas. So trying to be at the table a lot earlier than maybe we have in the past. Development review, I wanted to touch on just a little bit about development trends. The first numbers you see up there under the first bullet were projections a year ago in terms of how many, for example, connection permits we anticipated issuing during this fiscal year. The second number is their actual number as of the end of April. So in all of these categories, we're actually, I think when I talk to Damon Reich, who's here and can answer any specific questions you might have about development trends, we're probably going to hit those targets. He is also, when I asked him, has this gone up and down in the last 2 to 3 years? It's been pretty stable, actually, in terms of our permit numbers, in terms of our reviews. Second bullet up there touches on our typical review timelines. I think in years past that's been more of a challenge here at CWS. I think I hardly hear from the development community about timelines and reviews being done in a timely manner. Usually there's a hiccup or a project that we have to address that's causing a delay, but things are actually getting done pretty quickly. Our site development reviews typically are done within 15 business days. Environmental assessment reviews are 12, and then our limited development reviews are 1 business day, but Damon reminded me this morning, usually that's the same day. So that's not an issue right now currently, and we'd like to keep it that way. I mentioned the CWS permit portal. That's an exciting project that is going to launch in the next 6 to 9 months. That's going to provide a lot of access for our applicants' project teams to check the status of their projects on their own, to submit things electronically. All the communications on applications will all be in one place, and it will reduce a lot of manual entry of data for our staff. So we're excited about that project and that launch in the next 6 to 9 months.
Just when you have a permit portal, I assume that there is a user interface that the applicant will work with. What I'm trying to look out for is where, especially for the urban unincorporated areas, where Washington County has, the LUT team has their permit portal, and then you have your permit portal, and what if there are different apps or systems behind it, like LUT uses Acela or something like that, versus what you're using? Will it have an effect on the end user what version of permit management software you use?
I don't believe that's the case. Damon, I'm going to put you on the spot since you've been here all day. And this is your project you've been working very hard on. So,
just to remind you, I'm Damon Reishi. I'm the Development Services Division Manager. We've had kind of a dual process with the county for years in terms of people have to submit for certain things to the county and for the storm, Sandy, and erosion control to Clean Water Services. And we've worked very closely with the county to sort of have that process work together, that there's one trigger at one organization sets off things at the other. We will have different separate systems, but we're working with the county to make sure that they maybe don't integrate exactly, but that they work together.
As long as we're ensuring that it's as seamless or easy as possible for our customers, while at the same time achieving the goals or the requirements that you have. Perfect. Thank you.
thank you, Damon. And then the last slide, before I take any questions, I mentioned we do a lot of work externally in terms of working with our different jurisdictions, but I also remind our team we could not do that work effectively if we did not work closely internally. A couple of examples, we work very close with Bob Umgartner and the Regulatory Affairs team in a variety of different ways. It was mentioned earlier about the IGAs. Hillsboro's done, Beaverton's almost there. We are now starting to negotiate new operating IGAs with the county, which is a big one, and then with the city of Cornelius are our next two IGAs that we're working on. Bob and Jamie Hughes are leading that effort, because whatever we agree to with our city and county partners in terms of how we operate has to be consistent with that permit. And who knows the permit best? Bob and Jamie and the rest of the RAD team. So they have been just critical to kind of working with our city partners on those IGAs. We updated our stormwater management plan 1.0, which was a basic update. We're going to do a more major update in the near future. That is a project we could not do on our own. It's coordinated with regulatory affairs. We work very closely with natural systems, so that's primarily on our sub-basin planning and resilient stream program. Again, if we don't work well internally, we can't work very well with our external partners. And then our last bullet up there is how we're coordinating with engineering and water technology. Those are just 3 projects that we're doing. 2 of those are in Sherwood and then Hillsboro. I think those have all been mentioned. Lots of integration, lots of communication internally, so we can work with our external partners. And I think that is the last slide, unless there are questions that you might have for myself.
So I'm looking at the roadmap book on page 88. I think that's under the same section that you were just talking about, right? And they've got service level and performance measures, and the target for 24-25 is basically all NAs. And I noticed the same thing on another one. So does that mean you've outsourced those to another department, or?
So there's 2 different types of metrics. Might need Jack to help me with this one. Service level and performance, thank you. So the service level is kind of, I always think of it as kind of like workload. So where we've put service level for NA, for example, it's related to, say, the number of permits that we might be issuing, and we don't set a number for it's whatever comes in the door is what we're going to respond to. On our performance level, though, we'll talk about how effective we are in, say, issuing those permits or doing those reviews within timelines. And so I think like 90% are issued within timelines is the target.
Yes.
So those NAs are really related to service levels that we want to report on, but we're not predicting a future for them necessarily, although we did on one of the slides.
So you've got, and then on another one on page 83, you've got regional capital funds administered, you got 7.6 million. So, and then all the rest of the ones are basically NA as well. So what do you use the 7.6? What do you spend the 7.6 on regional capital funds administered?
They control those.
So, well, I know they control them. I'm wondering, so does that come underneath the capital? Should I see that in the capital improvements?
Yeah, and it may
Okay.
shift. With
Okay.
the shift of some of the work that Andy took with him over to capital, that roadmap may shift now and shift over to that future
Okay.
roadmap.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Okay,
Yep.
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
So Jerry and Elaine and the chair, you give us, you're looking at our roadmaps and the teams that have NA. It means they just haven't developed them yet. So
Okay.
I think it's well noted, and it gives people the incentive to get those metrics done. So we really appreciate it, because using service level metrics is something new to Clean Water Services. So we're trying to get them down, because if you don't have your results, you don't know if you're pointed in the right direction. So the team is duly noting and hearing.
Well, and what I particularly liked about this, I mean, the budget book has got the numbers in it, but this has really the detail on what it is the departments do and what their targets and objectives and those kinds of things. So to me, this was, I love the numbers part, but this tells me a lot more of what actually they do, and so I've appreciated looking at this.
Thank you.
Agreed. Good afternoon, members of the Budget Committee. Caroline Lobdell.
Sorry.
Oh,
I think this is this the first budget year that we've had you before us?
yes, I was going to touch on that.
Oh, well, she's so awesome. She needs no prior introduction. She can handle it all. So,
I appreciate that.
no, really, thank you.
On that note, for those of you who have had experience with me, you can probably predict that I intend to be brief and directly to the point. So the legal shop at Clean Water Services is comprised of 3 FTEs, and our job is to protect the legal interest of the district, and we do that by way of giving legal advice, drafting, preparing, and finalizing legal documents, and retaining and managing outside counsel when subject matter expertise or capacity requires us to go look out elsewhere. In terms of budget impact this year, slight 6% increase in personal services, and that's really just the COLA adjustment and performance metrics, or what's the word? Performance? What's the pay,
No, it's
though?
performance-based pay.
Yeah, thank you. Performance-based pay, performance increases. But the heat on my budget, this is still a relatively small impact in the totality of the district's budget, but there is some heat on my materials and services, which is really professional services, and there is a percentage increase of 72%. So I want to address, why I felt the need to raise that number, and it really is on that external professional services with the new role of Chief Compliance Officer, which I also serve as, that marriage between the legal compliance and compliance district-wide. I anticipate over the next year that I will need to have some subject matter expertise, and additionally, there's some policy work that we have some policies that need some review in terms of compliance, and just has been in place for a long time without a fresh legal eye, and I plan to address some of those in the upcoming year. One change worth mentioning to the Legal Services Department is that I am in the process of finalizing a start date, and she hasn't made an announcement to her current employer, but to in-house a little bit of different subject matter expertise than what we currently have on deck, and that is to include employment law and labor law, general publicly entities, governance in general, and public records. So, any questions?
The person you were just talking about, adding that number is in other personnel expenses?
No, that is already one of the 3 FTEs.
Oh, okay.
There's a vacancy right now that I just staffed. It took me a little while to figure out what the subject matter expertise I needed to complement my skills and where I could use help.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You run a very lean department.
We say that it's small, but it's mighty.
Oh, that's what I thought. Well, I am last. Appreciate everybody's patience. I might not be as short as Caroline, but I'll try to be as direct as Caroline was.
But does she get to throw as many chemical names at us and biological terms that I've never heard of? And no, but she can run circles around us with all the legal stuff.
That's right. Each their own.
Subject matter experts are wonderful.
If members of the budget, committee, if you would turn to page 203, I hope you can then follow along with me during this presentation. You heard earlier of the importance of the regulations in driving what we do at Clean Water Services. We do own and operate publicly owned treatment works, and we are a very heavily regulated industry. We receive regulations directly from Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality, and we also see regulations either directly or through DEQ from the Environmental Protection Agency. We have to comply with water quality criteria, the water quality regulations, air quality regulations, as well as learning how to use the clicker doohickey. There you go. Thank you, sir. And I'll try to touch on just a few of the regulations that we are wrestling with over the next year or have worked over the last year. You'll see in the slide that every one of our 3 groups under the Regulatory Affairs group has the term services in it. Rick talked about matrix management. Logan talked about matrix management. We in Regulatory Affairs could not be successful without a lot of support and integration with the other programs and other teams. Much of what you've heard about today, moving things around, I think has really helped us make that work much more effectively and much more efficiently, which is important because much of what our compliance services program does goes beyond just making sure we stay in compliance now and with our permit, but we really are working hard to figure out what we do with our next permit, the permit after that, and even looking out 3 years. Just from a very personal perspective, I got into this business a long, long time ago and did have some influence on what drove some of the treatment facilities at Clean Water Services. And what's very clear is we work on a generational basis for what we upgrade and what we do. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be thinking out 10, 20 years for our planning purposes and what we want to do and achieve. And much of what compliance services is doing now is looking at that long-term compliance strategy and trying to figure out how we craft our way there, both to be in compliance and perhaps more importantly, to influence some of the compliance requirements so that we can achieve our purposes. Our environmental services program a few years back would have been called our pre-treatment program. The name correctly implies we look much more broadly than just the industrial control and are really looking a lot at pollution prevention, working on complaint responses. So if somebody has some grief about what they see in one of the creeks or streams, we have a program to go out and figure out what's wrong with that, help them fix it, and we work very closely with our co-implementers, the cities and the county, to do that. Have established a real strong relationship and a real strong program. We also realize that treatment won't solve all of our problems by itself, and so we are looking at how we do pollution prevention and do it effectively. Our laboratory services program, I like to brag about because I think they're one of the most effective, efficient laboratories I have ever been associated with. Our turnaround times are measured in days where most are measured in weeks. We do that to provide a service to our customers. That's what allows us to help our customers be as nimble as they are. One of the big changes in our laboratory is most of our monitoring used to be related to compliance. We still have a lot of compliance monitoring and analysis to do, but we are really shifting to projects, supporting research programs, because that's what our customers need. And if I can figure out how to get, there we go. Oops. Our budget this year, we, as you heard, have moved one person out of regulatory affairs and moved that into Jack's program. And that really is because our data management requirements with the DEQ have become so complex, we really need a different skill set to manage that. And it's best to move it out to the people who like to do that. And so that's what we've done. We have an increase, though, in personnel services. That is because of mid-year requests. We have hired 2 people into our compliance service programs. One of them is supporting our stormwater program. You heard a little bit about that as we develop our stormwater plans. Looking into the future, what we call our stormwater management plan, or SWAMP 2.0. And the other one is helping a lot with our more complex compliance reporting, but more so to make sure that we have the infrastructure needed to do all the sampling we need and the reports we need in a timely and efficient manner. It's getting too much to rely on somebody's memory, especially somebody like me. So now I would like to walk through just a couple of our program areas and touch on a few of the things or aspects of it that others have touched on. In our environmental services program, we do still a lot of work with the industries. We've got a very strong working relationship with the industries in our county. My good friend Andrew mentioned planning for the future, planning for growth. So we've been reaching out to the industries to make sure they understand what our needs are and we understand what their needs are, and we capture that in a commitment in their permit so that we're not confused as they grow, that we get the information we need in a timely manner so that we can help them not have, or we can help them in their growth and not constrain them because of infrastructure on our part. We've done a lot of improved permitting, so our permits are much more direct, much clearer of what people need to do and need to be in compliance, and that has really helped out in that we now have better controls of some of the industrial sources. For example, working with nitrate and Rick and his team, because that is influencing our ability to do the biological nutrient removal that we'll touch on in just a little bit. But the point being that if the industries know what's expected of them, it's much easier for them to plan and decide to do that, and we can avoid having to do the direct regulation of that. I wanted to go off subject just a little bit and talk about PFAS. It came up as a quick question. The perfluorinated alkyl substances are a growing concern. We have invested quite a bit in our laboratory to be able to monitor those and evaluate those. I'll touch on that in a little bit. But the regulations related to those are changing faster than any regulation change I have ever seen come out of EPA. The Environmental Protection Agency has already established a drinking water criteria of 4 nanograms per liter. Their target is 0. It's going to be a difficult target to achieve because these things are widespread and ubiquitous. They have also developed water quality criteria, proposed water quality criteria. They have taken public comments. We've commented on them. We understand the numbers that will come out will be much lower than they proposed. We should be able to meet the water quality criteria from our discharges into the river. But there's another set of water criteria that they are developing that they're going to call the human health criteria for people either drink water and or eat fish. And those we anticipate to be very, very low. And those are going to be what ends up being our regulatory driver. We are working to get ahead of those regulatory drivers. And one key area that we are doing that is development of PFAS management plans for our industries. Logan mentioned that one of his best people came over from his group to our group, and her name's Amanda. We paired her with one of our most experienced environmental services, source control people, and that has been a team that has done just great work reaching out to industries and starting to see what we could do to limit the amount of PFAS coming from those industries. We have had some very notable successes. We've still got a long ways to go. What's important about that, though, is across the nation, people are looking at this source control to be one of the key steps we do to try to limit the amount of PFAS entering our environment. And we probably have a better data set than just about anybody else, and certainly have a better data set outside of those communities that have extremely high levels of PFAS. Ours are orders of magnitude below the municipalities where they've had some very real concerns, but because these criteria are low, it's going to be a critical question, what can we do at the kind of levels that we are working with? And so I just wanted to give our team a pat on the back for the efficiency and effectiveness of that. We work on illicit discharge responses with the cities, as I talked about. We are also working a lot on reuse. We've worked with the state of Oregon, Oregon's DEQ. We got legislation passed to have them take a much closer look at the reuse program. So we are both working on what those regulations may look like with DEQ, but our source control program is also looking at the kind of pollutants that we get from some of the industry and commercial sources that may constrain our ability to do reuse. And we've had some remarkable success again with voluntary efforts once we explain what's going on with our industries to reduce some of those pollutants. And the last area I wanted to touch on real quickly with environmental services is stormwater control. Diane has mentioned it, Joe mentioned it, but stormwater is going to continue to be a very significant issue for us and for the nation. EPA has identified that the one sector where pollution is still growing in the United States is stormwater. Because of that, they are really looking at strategies to reduce stormwater. With the groups from NSES, we have identified some very innovative ways to try to integrate our programs, to integrate stream enhancement with stormwater control, as well as do that stormwater work. Part of the IGAs that you heard Joe talk about will be how do we make that happen. And when we've talked about the Stormwater Management Plan 2.0, that is really what we are trying to figure out how to achieve. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering about the stormwater regulations base moving up. What that might mean for your relationships with the cities going back to these updated IGAs. Do you foresee a time, or maybe you're already doing this, where there will need to be more education, both with the city public works folks as well as with their development side, so we can co-create solutions versus having to have institute requirements on them?
Yeah, members of the committee, Chair Harrington, I'll take a shot at that. Diane can correct me where I'm wrong. That's much of what we are trying to do with what we've called the SWAMP 2.0. I think the interactions Joe and the rest of us have had with the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough have really worked to create what we are calling some sort of, or an adaptive management strategy.
Okay.
So the solutions that we look at for our area may not be the same as the solutions that the cities look at. Their drivers may be different. A good example is the city of Beaverton, right? They've got some very dense area that they need to work with, and their plan has to focus on that very dense area. So the structure we are trying to set up is to allow the cities to do that site-specific information or site-specific strategies. We have also invested in a lot in understanding. We have worked with them to explain the permit requirements, what they need to do, and it's been also very helpful for them to explain to us what their issues are and how they want to try to resolve them. What we found is those two cities are very mature. Some of the other cities are not quite there yet, I don't think, and we will be working with them on the education, whether we support them, and other strategies for bringing the cities along. And what we want to do, and what Jamie Hughes is going to lead us through, is how we craft the regulatory requirements so that we can fulfill our role as in assuring that we comply with the permit, that if the cities want to do something different, that what they do will comply with the permit, and that we have the structure inherently built so that we can do our reporting that we have to do to DEQ. We've talked a lot with DEQ about that, and so far we're getting a lot of support on this strategy for adaptive management, believing it will allow us to do a better job.
Thank you.
Apparently I did okay.
Well, I guess going back to your comment about, thank you, about PFAS and I can't use the technology you did words-wise, but getting to zero. Is that an aspirational, or is that going to be a mandate? And do they give you guidelines on how the heck we get there, or do they even know how to get there?
Members of the board, Chair Willie, that's a great question. And at this time, probably the thing that is stressing people in our profession end of the field is there's not a clear guidance on what is acceptable. And so the 0 is clearly aspirational. The 4 is a target for the drinking water program. But what we really hope to be able to get from EPA and DEQ are the targets that they believe are going to be safe as we take this, what I think will be a long-term strategy to reduce PFAS. Because it's going to include banning the use of it or banning the production of it. So it's going to be a long-term strategy. And what would make us feel much more comfortable if we did have those explicit targets about what's achievable. And I think EPA wants to develop those, but we're still quite a ways out.
Are there any?
Yeah, just a comment. It's kind of mind-boggling to me that we have 44 people assigned to regulatory affairs just to stay in compliance. It takes 44 people to do that. That's a message in itself.
It is a message in itself. Many of those are with our laboratory, and we'd be glad to give you a tour of our laboratory and see the kind of work that we do.
We've got it.
Yeah.
We had it.
Mm-hmm.
You have indeed.
Yeah, we even had to do little experiments.
That's right.
Were you out of town?
Yeah, she was.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah. If I might, Director Willie was asking about the new human health level of 0. Has the EPA or anywhere in public health in the United States had any other factor chemical where the human health measure is 0? I don't know that we have. So this is new ground. I mean, look at particulate matter, right? It's not good to have any of this crud in your lungs, but the acceptable level isn't 0. So I was looking for an analogous situation.
So just a clarification, their target for 0 is for drinking water, not for the human health ambient water quality criteria. But There are some other parameters where their aspiration would be to get to zero, and we know we're never going to get there. Lead is a good example of lead in water. So there are those, and that's a little bit different than setting the target that is at a threshold that is safe for a certain proportion or risk value, which is what we are looking for at this point.
Well, thank you for reminding me about lead. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. It's very bad for those human developing brains. Got it.
And Commissioner Treese, anytime you want to tour the lab, feel free to give me a call. I like to show it off. So does our team. For our laboratory services, we have been.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry. Yes.
I'm just curious because I love the idea of pollution prevention, and I'm just wondering, I originally wrote down 2 questions. Where are your best opportunities for that? And then what are the most intransigent? And I'm guessing PFAS is going to be one of your most intransigent pollutants to deal with. But are there any kind of happy opportunities out there?
Yeah, we have had success with the pollution prevention program we've implemented, but it's been more on a sector basis. The auto sector, for example, where we've done the green industries, they have been very responsive in developing best management practices so that they can announce that, and that has been persuasive. One of the big hurdles that I've always found with pollution prevention, it really comes more from when I worked on it at Oregon's DEQ, is it's very difficult to show what did not happen because you did your work. So it's very difficult to quantify. And for those who don't know, I am an engineer and I like to be able to put a number to it. So it's a struggle for us who want to be able to quantify the effectiveness of it. I do think PFAS will both be one of the more intransigent issues that we need to deal with, but I think it's also one where we have a lot of opportunity. Any other questions before we move on? With our laboratory, we are improving our efficiency. We've moved satellite labs out to the plants, and what that allows us to do is provide more immediate response than we have before, and it also allows us to provide a laboratory person who can help do the instrumentation, maintenance, calibration, verification, and that if something does go haywire at the plant, we've got a lab person out there to help try to sort out what is going on with that. A little bit about the supplies. Over the COVID period, we found our laboratory supplies got much more expensive and much more difficult to get hold of. But there's a silver lining to that because that forced us to do a whole lot of work trying to figure out where we could get better service and better distribution. So actually, we expect our costs and some of the supplies to go down over the next year or so. The analytical support, I will note that we are measuring the PFAS now in about 100 parts per quadrillion. Commissioner Wiley, you asked me once and I gave you a lousy answer for a comparison, so I'm going to try to give you a better one. That would be like 1 drop in 200 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Or, I don't see it. Joe, do you have a small sticky pad note? Would you hold that up? Yes.
He does.
It'll be finding something that size hidden somewhere in all of Washington County. It might be in timber. But I wanted to touch a little bit on aluminum also. And the reason I did that is last year we talked about the dilemma we had with Oregon's new aluminum criteria and our use of alum, which is an aluminum salt, to remove the phosphorus from the wastewater treatment plants. And you have also asked about the chemical supplies that Logan talked about and his hope that we would be able to reduce those in the future. What we were successful at is convincing EPA and DEQ to use a biological measurement of the aluminum for the application of ambient water quality criteria. Not what comes out of the plants, but for after it mixes in the river. That was a huge lift for us and a huge benefit. And so our regulatory affairs team got together with Logan's team and Rick's team and created a team to see what we would do with that information and how that would influence both the regulations and our future permitting, construction out to 2 or 3 permit cycles. And to be fair, that was the most interesting and efficient efforts I've ever been involved in my career in environmental programming. So the question we had last year was whether we could figure out how to meet both of them. That's no longer the question. The question is not whether we will be successful, it is how successful we will be. And we have started the discussions with DEQ, and Logan's absolutely right. In the future, we will be putting out less chemical, less of the aluminum toxicant into the river. And I wanted to bring that up because I think it does such a good job of illustrating the effectiveness of these matrix efforts. We're also going to start doing the 6-PPD, quinone, bacteriophage, and a bunch of other method development. I expect over the next few years, we will be having to figure out how to provide a lot of support to our co-implementers. You asked me about stormwater, the education of stormwater. I think as they start developing their programs, they're going to have a lot of questions about the quality of their stormwater, and I expect we will be asked to help provide that information. As you can see, our lab team, they're an eclectic bunch. But they seem to get the work done, and they're all using the appropriate safety equipment.
Somebody is notably missing.
Yes. What can you say? But, yeah, well, we should have. I didn't think about that in this day and age. But you had asked about our Ripple building. That is progressing, well, on time. And we are already starting the process of a couple of the final details. One of them is what that human environment is going to look like for our lab folks. They spend a lot of time in the lab, but they also spend a lot of time in the office. We want to make sure they have opportunities for these collaborative rooms. We want a nice space so that we can do the kind of interactions with the teams you have just heard about as well. One other area we're putting a lot of effort into is understanding the logistics associated with the move, because we're going to want to be able to keep producing the data that we have while we start moving equipment and people from one place to the other. And that is a lot of logistics to figure out. We are getting there, but it also influences our asset management. Chair Harrington, we've got to pay attention to our instrumentation and how we move that, as well as our equipment and tools. And one part of that is deciding where we invest now and where we wait to invest until after we have done the move. So we're progressing nicely with that. So far, it's working very well, but we've got plenty of time to find a kerfuffle or two. And I would note also, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the PFAS instrumentation that we have, we've got that in under budget and ahead of schedule. We are already doing our QA comparisons with the consulting lab that has done some work for us. We have reached out to DEQ, and we're going to be coordinating with them on PFAS measurements so that we know when we work with DEQ, we're using the same methods, procedures, and getting the same results and the same answers. And then for the compliance services, as we mentioned earlier, the reporting requirements have become much, much more complex and much more detailed. DEQ is really looking to us to provide them information through electronic data portals. That doesn't sound so complex, but if you look at our permit, it is much more complex than anybody else's permit. And that starts to feed in then how do we develop these reporting procedures that have all kinds of nested what-if equations. What if the flow is this? What if the oxygen is this amount? So we've been working a lot on that, and that's one of the reasons we need the support from IT so that we can do that, do it efficiently. If we ever look to providing services such as providing PFAS support to other entities or stormwater support, we need to be able to have that kind of reporting and tracking of the work that we do. I've touched on many of these already, but just to touch again on the stormwater management plans 1 and 2. We broke those up because we wanted to get our regulatory commitment out to DEQ in a timely manner so that we met those and let us work with the cities for developing a new vision of what our stormwater programs are going to look like. We will look for DEQ support, but we did not want to have that compliance schedule overriding what we did. We are kicking off a number of projects to work with the cities and make this adaptive management strategy come to life. A lot of work on the regulatory compliance strategy, the nutrient strategy I talked about earlier, but now that we have completed that work, we have started our interaction with DEQ to update the rules that we need to update to make that happen. They include the what's called the total maximum daily load that sets our targets for the river and then sets our limitations. We are working with DEQ to update reuse. And there's a lot of work we're doing with thermal load management. Logan mentioned that. We still are implementing or relying a lot on our shading program to provide us offsets for the thermal loads. We expect reuse to help out. Jamie, again, is working on the flow augmentation. I should note Julia is doing a lot of the work for our nutrient strategy. We've got some very good staff leading those programs. You heard a little bit, though, also about the eDNA. The environmental DNA gives us a tool that we have not had before. Our permit requires us to do biological monitoring. It has not been all that effective the way we have done it, but the environmental DNA is going to give us a tool that I believe will ultimately really help us answer a very difficult question, and that is all that we're doing, is that making a difference for who lives there and the environmental impact that we have. And I think that's actually a very exciting change in our business.
Are there any other like utilities that are on the forefront or have experience with eDNA, or are you having to take other experience from I don't know where, academia maybe even, I don't know, to try and apply it here?
I'm not aware of other utilities that have used the eDNA for the general environmental benefit. There are other programs that have. And let me give you an example. The state of Alaska has used eDNA to help them track their salmon runs.
Yep.
And so, and I'll touch on this now then, we're using the eDNA to help us get a better understanding of when the coho salmon are moving up the main stem of the river. We're doing that because one of the standards that is going to be most difficult for us to achieve and work with will be the temperature standard that's designed to make sure we don't impair that movement of fish. Logan has also mentioned the aerial overflights, and so we are using that information to help us get a much better picture of the signature from our discharges on how that influences temperature during these critical periods. So what we are able to do is pull together a lot of engineering, Logan and his team looking at if they can help reduce some of that temperature, my team doing some of the modeling of how the discharges impact the river. But now what we believe we will have is a good picture of what that plume actually looks like from temperature, and to make sure we can create a passage for the coho moving up during that critical period. And we may actually be able to understand when they are moving, so we'll know when to critically plan that. So there's been quite a bit of work on that eDNA that others have done that we are following up on.
Are you already doing the level of sampling that you need to support that, or will it require you to implement more sampling out in the field?
At this point, we are doing the level of sampling that we need to do that.
So it's a level of analysis now.
Yeah. And Chair Harrington, I must admit I've got a strong bias. If anybody asks me if we should do more sampling or more analysis, it's easy for me to go to yes on that. So you'll probably have to find somebody more level-headed than I am to answer that. That's right. But I think we've got a very good program for getting that data. We've got a very good program for collecting the data we are doing for the PFAS and for the compliance. At this time, I think that helps us. I think we will have to grow sampling in the stormwater program to help the various municipalities out.
Can I ask another question, ED&A question? Are you also doing snapshots of any portions of the river or the watershed of what is there now versus what might be there in the future? I'm thinking about, and this is a tricky one, but I'm thinking about things like freshwater mussels, which might be pretty environmentally sensitive. Now, you could improve water quality, and they could move in, and that might demonstrate improved water quality from a functional perspective. But if they don't move in, it's not necessarily because the water wasn't improved. And so I'm just, what other purposes are you thinking about for the ED&A?
And so Dr. Blythe Layton, she is not here. She's been leading up our work on ED&A beyond just what's required for the regulatory arena. And she's also been working with the Tualatin Watershed Council, doing some work with the ED&A. And some of that work is designed to define who is there, right? There are some very interesting results, both with the mussels and with the cutthroat, coho, and steelhead. For example, we were finding some signatures of steelhead where when we snorkeled, we didn't find any. So it's so far been very positive. Unfortunately, Blythe knows that a lot better than I do, but the results are interesting.
Is there any interest in frogs, since we have a whole bunch of threatened frog and turtle species?
Amphibians are really, connected to environment quality and such. The trick with animals, and one of the reasons why as an ecologist I tended to measure vegetation, is vegetation doesn't keep moving around or have population increases and decreases due to external factors. And that's what makes the eD&A piece tricky. It would be really cool to say, oh, we'll just watch for red-legged frogs in this area of the watershed, but they might be absent for other reasons, and it makes it very difficult to interpret.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And actually, that pretty much covers what I wanted to cover with our programs. I would note that although we're not, other than the 40-some people you talked about, I think we are very efficient, and I would note again that the reason we are effective is because we can collaborate so well with the other groups. We would not be able to do this at all by ourselves, and that's a model that works really well for us. Commissioner Willie, I would want to point out the 238,024 analytical results. We checked that. That's quite an underestimate. We'll probably be at 260,000 this year. So when we think about the people out at the lab, they're turning off a lot of information. And you'll see that we are up to about 60,000 compliance determinations. There is a lot of tracking of this data to meet the regulatory compliance for the reporting, the quality assurance that we have. One of the aspects of our budget this year is that we are asking for an update for our laboratory information management system. It's our database that helps us manage that. Right now, we are churning out so much information that the infrastructure of our current one cannot handle it. It slows down, sometimes it stops, and my lab team likes to remind me that that's not the most effective or efficient use of their time to be sitting there waiting for the data system to respond. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, I know, Chair Pham, we still have some work to do as a budget committee. So where are we at?
Well, I think this is the time that we invite public comment.
Yes, this is the second and final opportunity for public comment, so I turn to Clerk Moss. Do we have anybody that signed to speak in the House or online?
Thank you, Kathy. I did not see anyone come in the auditorium. Did anyone come in the auditorium that wishes to provide public comment on the rest of the CWS budget presentation you've heard today? I'll give you just a moment to raise your hand or start coming forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any member online via Zoom wish to provide public comment for up to 2 minutes on this CWS budget? As you've heard the afternoon presentation, give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. At this time, I just want to go over the financial summary. Before I say that, actually, I just want to comment and give gratitude to everyone on the CWS staff. Really blows my mind how much passion there is in this organization. And when Jack was speaking about HR, I was thinking, this must be such a fun place to work, because everyone really seems to love what they do. And I'm so impressed with the level of knowledge and what you do for us here in Washington County. So thank you on behalf of CWAC. This time, we are looking for a motion to approve the 24-25 budget. Is there anyone here that would be? I hear a motion from Matt Wellner.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 budget in the amount of $789,339,900 as presented in the fiscal year 2024-2025 proposed budget document and recommended for adoption by the board of directors.
Thank you. Do we have a second? From Commissioner Wiley, thank you. Willie, apologies. We have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Enthusiastic. Terrific. I don't believe there was any nays, right? Do we have any nays? No. With that, motion passes, and I adjourn our meeting. We actually made it.
Great budget in brief, by the way.